Welcome back to the Marvel Movie Minute, a daily podcast in which we assemble to explore the films of the Marvel Cinematic Universe 1 minute at a time. In this, our 6th season, we are looking at The Avengers. I'm Andy Nelson from the Next Reel Film Podcast.
And I'm Pete Wright, introducing Loki, God of Bystanders.
That's right. Today we are talking about Minute 49, which begins with a kick to the chest and ends with a headbutt. That's right. It is a very, very punchy-hitty minute. A lot of fighting between our heroes here. Joining us on the show, we have some new guests. We're very excited to have a part of this. Lester, Clark, and Kynan Dias from the Exorcist Minute are here. Hello, you two.
Hello.
I'm so glad to be here. Thank you, Andy and Pete.
Yes, thank you guys so much.
You guys really, you responded so quickly to get this, your favorite minute of this movie. I can't wait to plumb the depths of your rationale.
Tooth and nail.
Normally I ask our guests, like, why did you pick this minute? And so I think that's a great place to start with this one, knowing that it was like, well, what's left? And here we are.
We needed some time, you see, because my good friend Lester is a very learned man. And one of the blind spots in his life is the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So
yes. And also, this is from myself. This is Baby's first podcast talking about the Exorcist Minute.
Right.
So all of my being, all of my thought, all of my energy is, centered around building this thing, which will someday become our empire, Kynan, you and I. So I haven't been watching any movies. I haven't been doing anything else except this thing. So when you so graciously invited us to come onto your podcast, I was like, okay, I'm going to watch the Avengers at some point. I'm going to watch it at some point. And then the minutes were filling up, and then I was like, oh man, well, I hope I get this minute or this minute or this minute, and then this was the minute that we had, and I was like, well, I'm gonna make something out of this. I'm going to talk about this. And I came up with some stuff. I'm really, really excited, actually. Yeah.
Lester bringing it. He's here to podcast the hell out of Minute 49.
Oh, yeah. No, don't you say nothing about my Minute 49. I got some stuff.
I'm ready for peak downloads on Minute 49. I'm ready to let's break the needle.
Did you guys hear on Minute 49? Oh my God.
That's right. Well, I think a good place to start is just getting a sense from you, Lester, coming into this, not having seen any of the films. We've had guests in the past talking about how they went with a friend who had not seen any of the films, and the Avengers was kind of their entry point into it. And they're like, how could you come here without having seen any of this stuff? And here we are with Lester right here.
We thought you were a unicorn. Oh, yeah. I thought you were on the Exorcist Minute the whole time.
The whole time. That's a running gag on our show the whole time. From Sally Field. Wonderful, wonderful Sally Field. So I'm coming at this from kind of an interesting place. When I was young and just starting to get into superheroes, actually, let's be honest, I was always into the villains. But right when I was starting to dip my toe into that stuff, that was around the time when comic books were just not cool. And so I'd be circling around a franchise, maybe I'd pick up a graphic novel at the school library, and that's when a jock would always jump out from behind the stacks and he'd be like, nerd! And I'd run away like a scared puppy.
Lester went to school in the 1950s movie, I think.
Exactly. I was born in the 1980s, but I went to school specifically in the 1950s. Right. Yeah. And fast forward to adulthood, and it feels like the whole world is turned on me. Now I'm the chucklehead for not being familiar with the MCU. My students who call me Mr. Thor, because if you see me, I sort of have that look. They tease me endlessly for not knowing enough about the MCU. But actually, I sort of chose a different nerd path. I got really into, as you can see up here, Norse mythology and the Vikings and, the culture and mythology surrounding I almost said the real Thor.
Right, the real Thor, absolutely.
The real Thor, right? But no, like I'm constantly trying to push that stuff on them. I'm like, oh, so you like Thor and Odin? Well, let's read about the mead of poetry or the apples of immortality. And like every Thursday, I can't help it. I'm like, hey, happy Thursday, or should I say, happy Thursday? because did you know? And they're like, yes, we know, Mr. Clark, we know. Like you've said it like a million times. So that's where I'm coming from. I'm a little bit more knowledgeable about the mythological Thor than I am about the Marvel one, but like I hope I can bring something to the table here.
Well, and I'm glad, we have Thor minutes at least, or a Thor minute that we do get to discuss. So at least that we have that here. Now, I mean, watching the film for the first time, though, did you follow it? Did you like it? Like, where did you end up landing as you kind of watched this film and experienced the Avengers for the first time?
I did, and it was interesting because I have seen like a handful of other Marvel movies before this. Like, I did see Captain America: The First Avenger, and I listened to your guys' show, covering that movie, and I really, really liked that. I don't know if I can say this on the. My girlfriend said that I have the. I'll just say the hips of Captain America. So I was like, well, now I got to go check that out.
The hips of Captain America. That's not what hips,
but like this
that's not what the kids say. Oh no, I think the kids say it's America's ass. That's what the kids say.
Right, there we go.
Okay,
I have
that's
his
a quote.
bottom.
So yes, okay. All right.
So I was like, okay, well, I gotta look at this. I gotta see this. And I was like, ooh, Hugo Weaving. I didn't know he was. Wow, this is great. And then of course I watched the first Thor because again, me and Thor and all that stuff. So I've seen Captain America. I've seen Thor. So coming into this, I've seen those movies and I was like, oh, okay, this is the one where like they all get together, all the special people get together and they fight the bad guys, right? So that's my experience with it.
Kynan, what was your what's your story with the MCU and this film?
Well, I grew up more of an X-Men and Spider-Man fan, so that was my deal. Reading all the Age of Carnage crossover Spider-Mans and all that. But I had read the Infinity Gauntlet, which is a little bit different from where the MCU goes. So when they became movies, I watched them. For some reason, I missed at the time the first Iron Man and the first Captain America and the first Captain Marvel and the first Doctor Strange, and I'm always there for the sequels. I'm not sure how that's happened, but that's sort of my experience with them.
That's so funny.
Interesting that none of the sequels ever provoked you to go back and fill in those holes.
Well, I think they just pick up running and you're like, well, I get it. I got what's going on here.
Well, as one of the hosts of a Movie by Minute podcast dedicated to Marvel, I highly recommend just go watch Iron Man. It does some really cool things.
I've seen number 2. I've seen number 3. I've seen Civil War. I've seen all the Spider-Mans. I don't know.
Well, just consider it a prequel then. Just go back and
prequel.
Oh, that's funny. Well, this is a very, our heroes are fighting. We're out in the woods, somewhere lost in Europe, in the Alps, presumably, is kind of where we are. We have Iron Man and we have Thor, and then, of course, as Pete alluded to, Loki sitting on top of the little cliffside, just sitting there watching casually.
There's a lot going on in this minute, but I think that's my favorite single shot.
Yeah.
It's a weird shot, right? It's like this overhead, it's over the shoulder shot behind Loki looking off the cliffside, which is a lot shorter than I thought. In the scene when he and Thor were talking on it, I felt like we were really high. And then, but now we're just like, it's kind of a low cliff. It's not very high. But yeah, we're over his shoulder looking down as he's watching the two fight below, and he's just sitting there, just sitting casually.
Yeah, you kind of imagine like a martini glass or something, like a Christine Baranski sort of like, this is exactly.
You might think he is overly fond of what comes next. Like he's having a fairly chill session.
That was kind of my question the whole time. I mean, is is this, two superheroes' egos, getting the better of each other, right? When they should be on the same side. They should be working together, for the greater good and all that, right? But like they just can't be, the number two. So they're fighting. Or is this a little bit of Loki? Is Loki low-key kind of like orchestrating this? Is he like setting them against each other, like pieces on a chessboard or something like that?
I think that would be a really interesting angle and certainly a fascinating lens through which to watch this movie and probably some of the subsequent movies. And I don't want to say anything insulting to the powers that be, but I don't think they're clever enough to have gone that route yet.
Well, what's interesting is like he has the scepter and obviously can manipulate people's minds when he's using it. Although he doesn't right now, but it does make you wonder, like, exactly how close does he need to be to it in order to have any sway over people? Does it have to be in his hand? Could he have been using it without them realizing when he was in the Quinjet earlier? It was there. He was there. Was he close enough to kind of be playing with their minds a little bit? I mean, it's something I hadn't considered.
But Andy, what are we saying? If Loki goes to Europe and drops his scepter, then the people back at his factory just like take a coffee break, like they're no longer like at the old evil factory, moving the evil from one bucket to the other.
That's exactly right.
The little coffee mugs that say "I love evil," I heart evil. Right?
But it's just a job when the boss is away, right? When that scepter is, when that stone isn't there, yeah.
I mean, it's a very, very good question because obviously they keep working. I mean, Clint still has his little glowing blue eyes, as does Eric and everyone else. But it does make you wonder why. Why do they
he's angling for that promotion? Yeah. I think he wants to be assistant to the Loki eventually. He wants to be sure.
Vice Loki.
Is it assistant manager or assistant to the manager?
Yeah, assistant to the manager, right?
Yeah, it's a funny thing with Loki, the way that this scene plays. And honestly, I think I would actually like it so much more. We've talked about this with our last guests. I really struggle with this sequence with the heroes just fighting each other. I'm like, can't they just, really, this is how they have to solve all their issues. I find it very frustrating. I would like it so much more if they painted it where Loki actually had been playing around with their minds a little bit and kind of that led to some of this. Like I would have ended up buying it a little more if that was in there.
Yeah. Like Andy, Pete, Kynan, I think we all kind of want that and we want it so much. But like, I think you guys are right with the shot that we have, that really quick shot of the back of his head. We don't have a close up on his face, like smiling evilly. We don't have like Thor and Iron Man's eyes turning blue, like the pew pew stuff or whatever. Like it would have to be like really, really obvious for us to say that that's what's going on.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. The other thing about the way that it plays is that with Loki sitting there, I guess there's the question, at least from my perspective, that later the heroes should be asking themselves, why didn't he just leave? That's
the shot I want.
That's the shot.
Like you hear them in the distance. It's like, like trees falling down, and just Loki just kind of looked like.
Yeah. Yeah. And the fact that I did not recognize what a missed opportunity that is then in the post-credit sequence when they're all sitting around eating shawarma and somebody doesn't say, why didn't he just leave? Like, that could have been the one line that fixes all of this.
That would have been very funny. I mean, we know that eventually we find out that it's all part of the plan, right? Loki needs to get into the helicarrier so that that whole thing can take place. That's all part of the plan.
Yeah, that's the Skyfall Black Panther plan B, right? That's sort of the whole trope of it now. Yeah,
exactly. But it's like, but why? Like, especially coming from Steve Rogers, who has the super strategic brain and should be thinking of all of this sort of stuff. Like, maybe it's because they all have different sets of information. He doesn't know what Loki's powers are. From the movie Thor. And, Thor should know this. He should know that his brother has the power, as Loki says, he kind of has these secret back doors that he can sneak through in different places to go places. Like that's how he sneaks down into Odin's treasure room at one point. There are these, or sneaks the frost giants in, right? So he's got access to secret back channels that he can use, but this is a situation where he doesn't. Thor theoretically should know he has access to those. Captain America should be asking these questions. So it does make you wonder, by the time they're up there, this is the sort of stuff they should be talking about instead.
I was surprised watching the movie again. I was thinking again that there was more to this than I had remembered. Like he sort of gives himself up and like, oh yeah, this is one of his doppelgangers or something. He's been captured, and they go, oh wait, no, that doesn't happen. He just has been captured, and he's just sort of watching them capture him
very easily.
Turns out there was nothing more to it after all.
Yeah.
Real sorry.
Yeah. I was like, oh, this is really clever. Yeah, there's a whole lot of stuff going on here.
Well, okay, so we were talking a little bit about this idea of the heroes fighting each other. I mean, do you buy into this? Do you like the way it plays out? Do you think it makes sense in context of the story of Thor and Iron Man going at it?
What would the real Thor Odinson do, Lester?
Oh, the real Thor Odinson? I think actually the real Thor Odinson would also like smash first and ask questions later as well. Right. So this actually this is in character, I think. This is on model for Thor. But again, what I would have liked is, Loki kind of sitting there and maybe not orchestrating it, but just kind of like this smug smile. It's like, oh man, I know my brothers so well. I know humans and mortals so well. This is so typical. This is all working according to plan, right? Like at least just have like a little shot of his face, just kind of like, something like that. But yeah.
I think it's really interesting how little we've seen of Thor. He's the last Avenger, I suppose, right? If Captain America's the first Avenger. And
is that how it works?
Well, yeah, because he's introduced like 3 minutes before this. And so he comes in and he's just completely going crazy and totally roiding out in the way that we've expected the Hulk to do. And that's sort of his position. It's pretty shocking, I think, in retrospect, like how little we get to know Thor in this movie. What if I hadn't seen Thor 1 and this is my introduction to him?
That's actually a good question. Like, so because I've told people that I'm doing the show and they're like, oh, but I haven't seen every single Marvel movie. So am I going to be able to listen to this episode? And I was like, no. You can watch, like, this is a standalone thing. You can, but like Andy and Pete, like, what is the average kind of like number of Marvel movies that someone, has seen before watching the Avengers?
What is the average number?
Yeah.
I haven't done any count recently, but
what do the polls say? What is the survey?
I would guess that, if it just completely speculative guess on my part, I would guess it's going to be something like 4.2.
Right.
You're going to go with a decimal.
When you average out thousands or millions of people,
it's got to be decimal. Absolutely.
That 0.2 is the movie that you started and you were like,
Right, exactly.
Well, of course, when we're getting together the Avengers, right, for this movie, and the thunder starts coming in and we know it's Thor, we're sort of excited. I just wonder if this introduction to him is what we were meant to expect or not, right? That he's just kind of coming in and punching everything.
Yeah.
It is very, when you look at each of our heroes' entrances, Iron Man before this had 2 films. So if anyone has had the most screen time up to this film, it's him, which perhaps speaks to why his introduction is welding a pipe underwater, right? It's like, it's not very exciting, but it fits in the scope of Tony and his giant phallic building that he's building in the middle of New York.
Mm-hmm.
Black Widow gets something a little more interesting. She's kind of in the middle of a mission. Hulk is kind of, lured into this scenario to kind of be brought into the Avengers. Unfortunately, Hawkeye is the worst. He's immediately just turned into a bad guy right out of the gate.
What do fans of Hawkeye think of this film? Like that, I
think Andy is one of the biggest fans of Hawkeye. Yeah.
They feel strongly about it.
even Jeremy Renner was pretty disappointed that he had to start the movie as getting instantly turned into a villain. It's kind of frustrating.
It's like, oh yay, it's Hawkeye. Oh,
yeah, right.
Yeah, Hawkeye's first close-up has his eyes turning an indecipherable color, right? So it's like the first really good look at Jeremy Renner's eyes, and they're blocked.
He doesn't even get to shoot an arrow. Right. Yeah, Hawkeye's eyes. Yeah. He doesn't even get to shoot an arrow until a few minutes before this, when he finally attacks the scientists' base in Stuttgart. So.
Right, when he's shooting innocent people, that's when Hawkeye gets to actually use his arrows. Right,
that's the first arrow he fires. Yeah,
so frustrating. Captain America's is probably the most interesting because it's more pensive and it's a little more kind of exploring his feelings about being resurrected after being frozen for 70 years. But this really, as you said, Kynan, is like a full-on action entrance that we have for Thor. Like, he's coming down in a lightning storm, landing on the Quinjet, and I mean, it's without the intentions to fight. His intentions are really to grab his brother, grab the Tesseract, and get him back to Odin, where Odin can, put him in a tribunal or whatever. But instead, it turns into this big action sequence, and now you've got these heroes going to blows because they all want Loki for their own thing, and they're just not communicating. And as you said, Thor is kind of leading with his head, or you may say his hammer, as opposed to talking about it first. But that's where we are, is in this place where they're just going to blows. And Iron Man is potentially the character who is more ego than anything, and he's coming into this situation, and Thor just shows up, and Iron Man is kind of sees himself as the leader, and I suppose you could say that he's he doesn't like that Thor just does this, and so instantly goes off.
Right.
So I actually really like this minute because of that, because it's like a really good look at our heroes being unheroic, right? Like you think about all that stuff that the Avengers stand for, right? Like truth, justice, peace, protection, right? Like they're supposed to be. Oh wait, is everything okay?
Oh no, you were sort of going into the other universe a little bit.
Where do you stand on DC Comics?
Oh, truth, justice, and the American way.
Oh no.
Those are the other guys.
Oh, okay. Have you seen the ancient Nordic banner behind me?
Finish your thought, and then I have a question.
Yes. So, like peace, protection, like all of that stuff, right? They're supposed to be the saviors of the world, right? And sure, they are saviors, but they're also like very human in this minute. Oh, it's like, okay, Thor is a special case, but like, you know what I mean, right? Like they have human flaws, they have these human frailties, they have egos up the wazoo, right? Like very fragile egos, right? This minute right here, this whole fight actually is like, as much as we want to say it's about like saving the world from Loki, or bringing Loki back to Asgard, or whatever. Like it's about two humans, again, not literally, but like they can't like leave their egos at the door. They have to be the ones to save the day, and that's not like what a hero is supposed to be. A hero is supposed to be selfless, is self-sacrificing, is supposed to think of the greater good, right? So it shows us that like even our heroes can sometimes be a little bit flawed, a little bit weak.
One, yes to all of that, and I regret that I'm about to change the subject just a little bit to pivot to some Thor expertise. This movie presents Thor. We're still in the brooding, dramatic part of Thor's overall arc in the MCU. He has gone, and I'll say, because I assume you haven't seen any of the movies that come after this. Is that fair to say? Have you seen all the Thor movies? Do you know where we go from here?
I have not. I've seen Thor and this one.
Okay.
So he becomes, I don't even know how you say it. He's not a buffoon, but he becomes much more of a comic character in a comedic character as the thing progresses. And it's funny. There's stuff in there that's just legit funny. But this movie, we get him introduced as the God of Thunder, and he is coming down on a plane in a bolt of lightning, and he's a badass. And I'm curious your take on that sort of a trajectory. Is real Thor a funny guy?
Well, I mean, like in the Norse mythology, the first story that comes to mind is Thor has to go get his hammer back, and Loki is helping him, and he literally disguises himself as like the bride to this giant. So he's dressing in drag to get his hammer back that this giant stole. It's like a scene from Bugs Bunny,
That actually helps me, right? That helps me rationalize the arc of Thor.
Right. Thor starts off in a Brana film, and the people who like the first Thor the most tend to say it's like Brana's Shakespeare plays, right? Like we're elevating Thor to the level of Shakespeare. And now the Waititi movies are like a Bugs Bunny cartoon.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very much so.
Which I prefer. I prefer the Waititi ones to the Brana and Taylor one, but
yeah, the third film for sure. The fourth one I have a lot of issues with.
But I was telling Lester, he meets Zeus in that one, and
don't.
Hercules is gonna go battle Thor in the next one.
is opening a can of worms. We had this talk on our show about mixing your mythologies, and
that's a hard pass.
That is a trigger for me. I'm like, okay, so no. Okay, that's my question. Okay,
all right.
Because I'm all Norse mythology, Mr. Guy over here. But okay, in the Marvel universe, is Thor a god? And then question 2, follow-up question: what religion is Iron Man? Because he's wrong.
Well, Iron Man doesn't have a religion, I would say.
Okay, well, then he's wrong anyway, because Thor is right there.
But Captain America is a Christian for sure.
Well, he's wrong too, because Thor is there.
Well, okay, so here's kind of the way they've set things up in Thor, in the first film, which you saw. So you should kind of you might remember this, that they are essentially aliens, we'll just call them. They're beings from another planet that live an incredibly long time. They have those golden apples that they eat to prolong their life, all this great stuff. And they're incredibly powerful. When they come down to Midgard, our planet here, they seem like gods because and this is how at the very beginning, like they talk about like the early Norse people, the Vikings, kind of saw them as gods because they just were so much more than they were, and and that's kind of how it's pitched in the film, where they're not really gods, they're just kind of people who just live a really long time and are really strong.
So
then you get to Thor: Love and Thunder.
Oh, okay.
And that's where, because then you have this character, Gore the God Butcher, who is very upset at his, quote, God, about having not saved, somebody they pray to, but didn't save his kid and all this stuff. And so now he's decided he got some, evil weapon, and now he has turned into this super powerful being that is going around killing, quote, gods and destroying them, because it's not just Thor and the people of Asgard who are kind of the, quote, gods for Midgard and the rest of the 9 realms, but there are all these different gods around the universe that kind of, I don't know, are they just powerful beings who happen to kind of, thrown over different planets, some for good, some for ill, some for not paying attention at all. But you have Zeus, you have many gods. They go to Zeus's palace, and there are all sorts of gods that we meet in there, including they mention, hey, I think that's the carpenter over there. So that's God. Even thrown in.
Exactly. So he's there too.
So who really knows? It's like they made kind of it was a little bit of a lot. A little of a lot.
Okay. Yeah, it was a little bit of a lot. That's a perfect way to describe that.
That first description of Asgard and Midgard, right? That's a little bit like Arthur C. Clarke, right? Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. So it's like any sufficiently advanced biology is indistinguishable from magic. And then in the latest one, it's sort of, I guess, the Alan Moore version of just like they're all in this shared fictional universe. So they're all buddies together. And Thor is kind of what he's like their, or Zeus rather, is kind of like their, he's not their boss, I guess, but he's first among equals, I guess.
He's the head of the union.
He's the head of the union, right? Yes.
Zeus, the head of the union.
Well, I always had a question about this scene here between them fighting, Iron Man and Thor fighting. It does sort of harken to that sort of schoolyard debate, right? About like who could beat who, right? Superman or Spider-Man, who could beat each other. And so I wonder if that's part of Feige and Disney's game plan here, like their strategy of like giving the fans that, or whether that was some other reason for that. I wonder if that's like what they decided when you have all these heroes together. We better get that figured out really quickly, that the answer is that none of them are stronger than the other one.
Right.
Which is definitely a part of it, and something that was prominent in the comic books. I mean, you would often have
there was preening.
Yeah, conflict between heroes, and they go to blows until they finally realize, oh, we're on the same side. Let's work together on this. And it's a fairly common comic book trope that they're exploring here.
That sort of reminds me of like in Who Framed Roger Rabbit, how they got, Daffy Duck and Donald Duck like on the screen at the same time. And they were like, the representatives of Disney and Warner Brothers was like, well, Daffy Duck cannot outwit Donald Duck. And then on the other side, well, Donald Duck can't get the one up on Daffy Duck. Yeah. And it's like they have to be on screen at the exact same time.
Amount of seconds and the exact same amount of lines. And then when Mickey and Bugs are in the scene together, it's the exact same thing. They have the same screen time, same amount of lines. But here we have to say like, they're not, no one's stronger than each other, right? Cap has to sort of come in and say like, oh, we're just done with this because you're just going to be doing this all day.
Yeah, exactly. Which he could do all day.
Settled science.
Settled science. Well, yeah. And here's the other thing is like, they're going at it pretty hard. I mean, we have a moment in here, aside from like repulsor blasts in the face and, a lot of rock'em sock'em that they're doing here, but we do have a moment also where Iron Man, they fly at each other and Iron Man grabs Thor midair and blasts him into a cliff where he then proceeds to grind Thor like up the side of the cliff as they fly up before, Thor pushes them both off. But, and I know like Tony had done some homework, I guess, whatever it was that S.H.I.E.L.D. gave him, a little background on Thor, Bruce Banner, Steve Rogers, so he kind of had a sense as to who they were. So he had an idea of who Thor was, but he also doesn't really know anything about Thor. They didn't know a whole lot about Thor. Like, this is, again, it's a comic book movie, and I know I'm probably asking myself far too many deep questions about something like this, but is there any concern with these characters that they're like, it's a good guy fighting a good guy. What if I accidentally kill him right here? Like, what if I push him into a cliff and like grind the entire front half of him off? Like, it's like those sorts of questions that I end up thinking about when I watch a film like or a scene like this, and I'm like, that would have really sucked.
You don't have Tony Stark's ego, right? Where you think that you both can kill Thor, but are also smart enough to not kill Thor.
Yeah,
right? That you have all of it figured out.
He can pull back at the very last minute.
Right. It's just enough pushing into the cliff.
Yeah. I will say I love these huge fights that kind of like span a whole bunch of like geography. Like it takes you from a cliff face to you going across the forest and knocking down trees and everything like that. But I always wonder, like, you're covering so much ground. Do you ever, like, when you stop, do you look around and you're like, where am I? Like how do I get back to where I was? Where's Loki now?
I know, it's very convenient that they land right back at the place.
We went back. We went around in a circle. Yeah.
I think it's really interesting that we end up in this little kind of a grove situation here, right? I think it's just prettier in the script, and Tig Notaro, like in a lot of his scripts is actively comparing whatever he's working on to a Western. Right. And saying like Serenity, Firefly is a Western, etc. Toy Story is a Western, right? Yeah. But yeah, this feels Westerny to me, and having this sort of like standoff there, even though it's in the middle of the night. But what it makes me recall is the Japanese version of a Western, the Jidegeki movie, and like Rashomon, where we have this sword fight in the middle of this dark grove. And I like that we sort of put it back there whenever we can. So they're like, oh, let's get back to that grove. That was really really cool looking, guys. Okay, let's get right back there.
Yeah.
Right.
It has a level of artifice to it, but in a way where it fits. I don't know. I guess there's something about it that feels, it has kind of like a contained feel. Yeah. Yeah.
So I will say this. The Marvel movies do a really good job of making you wish that you had whatever special power the character that you're watching has, right? Like, even if it's not like your favorite special power, like before coming into the movie, it's like, oh, I really want to fly. But then you watch like Spider-Man, you're like, actually now I want to like crawl on walls and everything. Like, that's what I want to do, right? You watch the Hulk and you're just like, oh, I want to get mad and crush stuff, you know? Like even if it's not your favorite superpower, like they sell it. Right? Like, even if it's like encumbered in some way, like it's like a super high-tech suit, or it's contained entirely within an object, like a weapon, like a sword or a hammer or something like that, right? Like, I know Thor has more power than just his hammer, but like, dang, you want that hammer, right? Like, what kid hasn't imagined they're wielding some weapon of superhuman, like, you know, whether it be a sword or a hammer, right? Like, I think this minute definitely pressed all the childhood buttons of like finding a stick in the woods and just holding it up and imagining it's like this other thing and swinging it around, hitting rocks and trees and your friends with it. You know?
But why does it need to be a stick if Disney now sell it to you at Walmart?
But you know, it's really like this movie represents a cup runneth over kind of moment for exactly that kind of play. That, like, if it wasn't a stick, it was some sort of branch as a shield, right? Like, there was something about that. And here we are, like, watching our imagination come to life and testing the bounds of human ingenuity versus sort of supernatural ingenuity, right?
Well, like Charlie Kaufman talks about the battle between technology and horse in adaptation, right? That's exactly what this is.
yeah, that's exactly it. That we have a guy whose entire locus of power comes from mind and technology fighting a guy who is of another plane, right? Who is a god. And that is, that's a significant clash that is just happening in a grove in the woods. Shouldn't be understated, right? It says, as punchy as this minute is, like, it's an exploration of much more than just punchy.
And it actually, like, it sets up, like, so the kids watching this, now they have an excuse, because it can be like, it's like, well, I really like Iron Man, so I'm going to be Iron Man right now. And the other kid's like, well, I want to be Thor. It's like, well, we can't fight because there's no Loki. Well, now you can, because it's in the movie, right?
I would be Loki. Can I just watch?
Oh, yeah.
I'd like to watch and do a podcast about it later.
So Pete and Lester are both Lokis. Is that what you're going with?
Oh, I got it. I love my Loki. Yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
He may look like Thor, but he's really Loki.
I look like Thor, but low key, no. I'm not.
I see what you did there. Now, here's a question that we haven't brought up, because, I mean, Thor has only been in the movie for 3 minutes or so. But this is Thor's first time coming down to Midgard and finding people who are potentially, I guess you could say, as strong as him. Do you think that he like looks at Iron Man as a Midgardian, or do you feel like, and eventually Captain America, like, I don't know, I was only just thinking about this. I'm like, does he think that there are actually other people, like other aliens or people who had come down from other planets to Midgard, or do you think that he has some sense?
If he really is the protector of Midgard, why doesn't he know already?
He doesn't watch the news. He doesn't believe in it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, right. Well, that could also speak to...
He says GNN is fake news. He doesn't want a part of it.
But no, actually, yeah, Andy, that's a really good question. Because, like, I saw the first Thor movie, and he met with... mortals with Midgardians, like, so he knows what they should be all about, right? So seeing Iron Man for the first time, I guess, yeah, that is a really good question. It's like, what does he think of Iron Man?
Yeah.
Well, we just don't have time, right? Because in Guardians, or I forget where he meets where he meets Rocket, but he calls him the Rabbit, right? I forget which movie that starts in, but yeah, we don't really have a quiet moment for him to reflect that. So here, Thor calls him the Metal Man, which isn't too different from Iron Man. I was thinking about that, right?
Yeah, right.
It's not much of an insult. Yeah, just saying Metal Man instead of Iron Man.
Yeah.
They had iron in like ancient Norse times. Why does he not think of iron first?
But here's the thing: that honestly,
Oh.
Thor is the smarter one here because he realizes as he looks at Iron Man, he's like, well, obviously he's not made of iron. None of that he's on is iron.
Does he have like Magneto powers? I wonder. Like he has the power of electricity. Essentially, can he figure out what element is in that suit as he's shocking it? Yeah.
Well, he clearly didn't know that his electric blast of lightning would actually power the suit up, as we find out in this minute.
Which is such a cool beat. I mean, come on.
Is it?
I love it. Stop it. Oh my God, you buzzkill.
475%?
You buzzkill. I love it.
So completely just unrealistic.
I don't see how Jarvis could get charged 400% of his capacity. I don't believe that that's a thing, Pete.
It doesn't matter, you guys. It doesn't matter.
He's a scientist.
Yes. Pete, I leave my phone charged all night, and it's still just 100% when I wake up.
My heart is 400% charged for this beat.
I don't know what the difference is between that and just saying it's over 9,000. Like, why does it have to be? Like, they picked a reasonable enough number, but it's still an impossible number for it to be charged that much.
Now, when it drops from 400% to 399%, isn't that just now 99%?
Right.
I'm just saying, I'll bet they could come up with a justification for 400%.
I would love to read that white paper. Yes, would love it.
I don't have it, but I still feel good. Mostly because of Tony, like his response. How about that? Like that's cool snark, and it's fun. It's fun. Screw this movie by minute thing. You guys are watching too carefully.
Tony's single like HUD shots that we have through this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Robert Downey Jr. never seemed like his energy always seems weird to me. Like the shot when he's looking and he says, well, how about that? Like, I'm just like, was he like, did he just wake up when he came in to read that line? Like it's such a snooze of a delivery that I end up not. This is one of the things that I'm frustrated with him in particular. Like a lot of those HUD shots, they just don't have the energy that he was giving with Jon Favreau in the 2 Iron Man films before this. There's something different about it in those HUD shots. And I don't know if they were shooting it in a different way and he just wasn't used to it. I'm not exactly sure what changed, but I feel like when I see the HUD shots in this film, I'm always feeling like his energy is a little different.
So I haven't seen the other ones. Like he obviously has HUD shots in the other Iron Mans.
Yes,
Iron Men. What's the plural? But like, do you think maybe he's trying to like play more like unflappable, unfazed? Like he's just bored with the whole thing? Because that's kind of like how I read it. Is like that seems to be kind of like Tony Stark's thing, is that like this big, like life-changing, world-changing like thing happens and his kind of like bazinga is like, well, now I'm going to be late for dinner or, something like that,
I think Andy's also onto something potentially because I don't know how much the average viewer understands how much a director's tenor sets the tenor for the actors, right? Like that's something that's really difficult to teach. It's really difficult to demonstrate in a behind the scenes DVD, But Favreau and Downey had this relationship that was incredibly fresh. Favreau is an actor. Whedon is not an actor. He's a TV showrunner, right? And that's a different experience. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if that was it, Andy. Like, okay, we're going to do the same thing that they did with John, but just do it, right? Just recapture that magic. Yeah. And that's easier said than done.
It is. And, it there's small bits in the film, Pete, and I know they move by quickly. The lines are quippy. The effects are great. So it's not like it's like bringing the movie down for me, but it's just something that I end up noticing as I'm watching this film. And it's something that's there, you know?
Well, Andy, and I want to lean in on that point that Kynan just made, because it really is, it calls out a feeling that I've been having just in the latest phases of the MCU, which is the sort of polishedness of it all. It feels less explorational, less like improvisational, less exuberant in the celebration of comics. It feels just very matter of fact, and we know that shiny blue clouds and orange clouds have worked before, so we're going to do that again, but we're going to put a guy with a headlight in his face. And I feel like that what Kynan just said is something that I really think you can make a solid point that starts here, that we now have this set of 5 movies that came before, and we now are building the scaffolding, the architecture for everything that comes after. And I think everything that happened before changed movie to movie more than any single other movie since, right? After this movie. And so I think that's a really good point. And so I don't want to completely dismiss the emotional beat that I get for this movie, or for that beat. How about that is 100% because I like Downey so much.
400%.
400%. Kynan gets me.
But there are still some times when the universe can surprise you, right? I guess they're just, maybe not necessarily a scene like Werewolf by Night or something like that, or WandaVision, which now seems like it's like 20 years ago, right? But
right.
WandaVision,
sure. Did you know there was a pandemic?
You're right. WandaVision or Werewolf by Night, or it can still happen again. I think that potentially I keep wanting them to go into different genres, right? And just embracing it, rather, as opposed to the sameness of a superhero origin movie. What's a Marvel rom-com? She-Hulk is a little bit different. Some people like that, some people don't, right? But it's different, at least.
Yes. Well, and I think the small screen exploration gets to exactly what you're talking about.
Right.
All of them dramatically different in tone and texture. Loki, Falcon and Winter Soldier, She-Hulk, very, very different properties, look different from one another, are presented different from one another. Werewolf by Night, great point. And the movies are not, they don't feel like, I thought we were going to get there with Ant-Man. I thought we were going to start getting great heist movies. And
They did the one.
They did the one.
Same thing with Captain America, the Winter Soldier. They did a great conspiracy theory film, and then that was it.
They did the one, and then it's just a lot of fighting. So that's fine. It's fine.
Yeah.
So, who do you think would win in a fight if Captain America didn't stop them? Like going back to our 4-year-old selves here, who do you think would really win here?
Well, why don't you two start? I'm curious what you two think.
Well, I'm still going to stick with my guns and say that Thor is a god, even though he's an alien. I mean, the early humans mistook him for a god, but he was strong enough to be a god in their eyes. So yeah, I think he's going to win.
I'm going to go with Iron Man in our first Civil War between Lester and me. I think Iron Man is more clever, and he seems to have more up his sleeve, and I think that he's going to figure out this boss battle pattern to how to defeat Thor eventually.
Interesting.
What do you think, Andy? Oh, are we going to? I want you to go.
Okay, I'm going to say Thor. Thor, absolutely. I mean, we see him already crushing Iron Man's arm, like the suit around his forearm, which tells me that give Thor enough time. I mean, he'll have the constitution to kind of hold out, and he will be able to eventually get to a place where those repulsor blasts aren't going to hit him, and he could potentially just crush the suit and kill Tony in the process, toss him to the side.
I want badly to say Iron Man just to make sthat it's an even split on this show, but I don't think I can. Even at 400% Iron Man, Thor is 100% God. I go with Thor.
All right.
Yeah. So I actually did a little bit of research here, guys.
And it turns out it was Iron Man all along.
Well, no. It was Agatha all along. But no, talking about like superpowers and everything like that, right? Like that, and that made me realize, like, okay, like you go out and you ask anyone, like, what superpower would you like to have? Would you like to have a hammer like Thor? Would you like to have, a super suit like Iron Man, right? Like you can only have one, right? And your life is pretty much the same. You're not fighting anybody or saving the world. You just have this power and you can do what you like, right? And they actually did a survey. They asked 2,000 people, the top 5 superpowers. Can anybody guess? What do you guys think is on this list of top 5?
Well, I'm assuming they're picking things that are they picking things that are like from other superheroes?
It's like common kind of like superpower tropes, right? Like not necessarily like isolated to any one hero.
Like it's not like I want to generate web fluid out of my wrist.
No.
Okay. All right. Just checking. Okay.
Peter Parker-esque
like a sort of pus. And then,
so I can save my dear old Aunt May. No.
Right. Exactly.
Well, I think flying absolutely is going to be.
Flying is definitely there. Flying is actually number 2, and it would actually be my number 1.
Oh, all right.
Okay.
Flying.
All right, Kynan, Pete, what do you two think?
Well, I've seen Lester's list, but before
you can't.
But my guess, my ideal one is the telekinesis thing, like Jean Grey. Jean Grey gets to move things with her mind. She also gets to kiss Cyclops. Those are my two childhood dreams. That's right. Or neither of those are on the list, though.
As long as he has his eyes closed.
Right.
But you're actually like the 5th person to say telekinesis, Kynan.
All right.
Because I've checked with my students, and they're like, oh yeah, telekinesis.
Absolutely.
And it's like,
okay.
For some reason, it's not in the top 5. I don't know why.
Insane.
Yeah. I would have put that. Yeah, that would have been my top 5 for sure. Pete,
I just assumed that like invisibility was the other one, because isn't that the trope? Would you rather fly or be invisible?
So invisibility is actually number 1. Which I don't know. When I found that out, I was like, that's saying something about this. This group of people they interview. It's like, why do you want to be invisible? What are you doing?
Why do
I've seen what happens in Hollow Man.
Yeah, right. Exactly, right. Or you just hate people and you just like, I want to be left alone. That would be my reason. I'd just like, leave me alone. I'll fly and be invisible, and that's good.
That's right.
Well, and that's why I think that this whole thing is such a great personality test, right? Like it really tells you a lot about yourself, depending on how you want to be seen in the world, and
or not seen,
seen. Yeah.
Well, what are the others? I mean, is strength one? Is there something about super strong?
No, nope. Oddly enough, super strength is not there. Do you guys want me to just read them off?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so we got number 1, invisibility. Number 2, being able to fly. Number 3, time travel. I would hate this. My OCD would just make me no, I got to do that over again. I got to do that over again. I got to do that. Like, I would never.
Oh, no. God, that's right. I didn't even think about it. Forget it. It's off the list.
I've seen About Time. I know how many times he kind of screws things up for himself. I've also seen The Butterfly Effect, and it's just one of those things. It's just a bad. Yeah. It's all bad.
No.
Yeah.
Don't want it. Don't want it. Number 4, teleportation. Mm-hmm. Which actually, that's one thing. I was like, oh my God, like traffic, commute, travel, like all of that would be like a non-issue. I could just like, hey, what do you feel like? Oh, I feel like some Italian. Snap, go to Italy, get some pasta, come back. It's like you're good.
Yeah, and if you could do that without growing a blue tail, then that's all better, right? Yeah.
Teleportation.
He's awfully gymnastic, that Nightcrawler.
Right, Nightcrawler.
All right, so that. Yeah, the number 5.
Oh yeah, and wait, isn't Nightcrawler? Isn't he like a super Christian or something? Like he's in a church, right? Like, so he's wrong because Thor exists.
He's not. He's not exactly a Christian. He's more like a Quasimodo figure.
He's hiding.
He's hiding.
Yeah, he took refuge.
Right. I remember. Okay, wasn't he like saying a prayer in one of the movies? Like I remember,
maybe.
The Valley of the Shadow of Death.
Maybe. All right,
but to be fair, it's a different Marvel.
That was very
all right.
At least at that point in time. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. And then the last one, which I would think would be like number one, is super healing abilities, like to heal any injuries or, like the thing that Loki shot in the face and it doesn't even faze him, right? Like you would think that would be number one. It's like you go to the doctor. It's like, I'm sorry, sir, you have this horrible disease. It's like, no, I don't. Snap. It's like, I'm okay. Like,
yeah, right. That's that's a pretty good list, actually. I mean, I could take all five.
Right? Give me all five. Well, except time travel. I'll take everything but time travel. Yeah.
I like that teleporting. That would be probably that'd be it. I mean, I would teleport freaking everywhere. My bathroom is like 8 feet away from me right now. I would teleport there.
We would become the laziest society.
I think that's why
I would teleport to the gym where I would teleport laps.
Right? Is there like a treadmill teleport? It's like a teleport, right?
Right. I know. Eventually, society moves like as everybody teleports. We're all like Wall-E people, just these big blobs. We can't actually do anything once we get there. But
it's like we have super strength, but we look like the Wall-E people.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. All right. Well, it has been a fantastic conversation with the two of you about, this conversation's gone all over the place for this 1 minute of fighting, which is, why we're here. This is absolutely why we're here. Yeah. Thank you both so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us. So fun to talk to you.
Absolutely.
Tell us a little bit about your show and where people can track you down and all that good stuff.
Oh, yeah. So it is the Exorcist Minute. So we review the iconic film The Exorcist minute by minute. It happens to be, so The Exorcist happens to be one of my favorite books. I read it every year for Halloween. And so with Kynan being a big film guy and me being all on the spooky books, we were, really excited to tackle like what a lot of folks consider the scariest movie of all time. So yeah, this is like my first or our first like movies by minute podcast. We plan to do a whole lot more, but like I got introduced to like seeing, the Star Wars minute, the Godfather minute, and I was like, oh, I want to do that. And nobody's done The Exorcist yet. So that's what we're doing. We're like, what is it? Like we just finished recording episode 50 something,
60 something.
Oh, 60 something. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah, 60 something. We got a backlog, so that we never miss a day. But yeah, it's been really fun. But yeah, if you guys want to find us, theexorcistminute.com. We're on all the directories, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, all that stuff. And we also have we have a Facebook page, that you can, like and share with your friends. And then we have a listener group, called Compelling Conversations, where you just get in there and you can chat about the movie, post memes and all that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, it's our first podcast, and we've been thinking about you, Pete and Andy, as our godfathers. So, yes, thank you so much for taking us under your wings. We really hope we go into this in the long run and look at some movies that are adapted from literature, some sort of a comparative lit, and all of them are going to have that we have in our current lineup, the question of whether God exists in that world as well. So,
right. Yeah, it's existential dread all the way.
That is fantastic. Well, it's a fantastic show. I have learned so much about that movie listening to you two talk about it, and I've had the privilege of being a part of it. So I certainly thank you. It's a lot of fun. Check it out, everybody. We'll have the links for that in the show notes. And again, thank you both so much. We are thrilled to have had you. And Pete, thanks as always.
Oh man, I lost my God-related joke. Crying out loud, it was right there.
I was watching you struggle. I didn't know what.
Nuts. It was just like right there.
Until next time, true believers.
Marvel Movie Minute is a production of True Story FM, engineering by Andy Nelson. This season's music is Message to the World by Anthony Vega, and this season's show art is by Winston Yabo. Find the show at truestory.fm, If your podcast app allows ratings and reviews, please consider doing that for our show.